Your name echoes in rooms you've never entered. They speak of you when you're not around, not in soft whispers, but with weight, with reverence, with the kind of tone reserved for stories that sharpen the spine. And what stings your haters most isn't your presence. It's your absence. It's that you don't need to campaign, to perform, to prove. Your reputation walks ahead of you like a shadow with posture, and they can't stand that. Because while they scheme in corners, hoping to dim your light, others are already speaking your name like a compass. While they dig pits, strangers are building pedestals out of the same dirt. That's what destroys them. Not that you win, but that you don't even need to fight to be respected. See, when people speak highly of you, it destabilizes your critics, because they've invested so much energy into crafting a version of you that was easy to dismiss. The jealous need their targets to be small, digestible, flawed in obvious ways. But when your name starts to rise, unassisted, unforced, it threatens their narrative. They say you're too much, yet people want more of you. They say you're arrogant, yet people find humility in your wisdom. They say you're cold, yet somehow your presence brings warmth to every room you touch. Their contradictions are catching up with them. Their fabrications are failing under the weight of your reality, and they hate that you don't even acknowledge the chaos. You just keep rising. They can't process how your name is met with nods, with smiles, with trust. That's the currency they can't counterfeit. Earned credibility, because reputation is built in the shadows, in the way you handled betrayal without spectacle, in how you carried other people's secrets without leaking, in the way you stood tall even when your knees buckled beneath the weight of everything they threw at you. Your reputation isn't just reputation, it's reputation with receipts. And that terrifies the insecure, because they're stories about your crumble when held next to your character. You were silent when you could have screamed. You were composed when you had every right to burn it all down. And now, that silence has matured into myth. You never asked to be admired. You just chose not to self-destruct. You chose depth when others chased image. You chose consistency while they mastered performance. And now, people notice. They admire how you move, with intent, with grace, with a sharpness that never seeks applause but earns it anyway. You don't over-explain. You don't campaign for attention. You just exist, and that existence violates the comfort of those who thought they could bury you in opinion. Your haters want you to be loud, so they can call you attention-seeking. They want you reactive, so they can call you unstable. But you gave them nothing, and still, you became everything they feared you might. Here's the psychology behind their suffering. Your reputation means their narrative failed. Their campaign against you had a deadline, and the world never showed up for the smear job. They told people to watch you, to expect the fall, but the fall never came. The glow-up did, and now, those same people are quoting your words, seeking your advice, aligning with your vision, and your critics are left with mouths full of dust. Their accusations now feel like projections. Their criticisms sound more like confessions, because the truth always leaks, and yours spilled into the minds of people they were counting on to hate you. It's hard to keep up a lie when the subject of it keeps showing up healed. You never needed to destroy them. You simply outlasted them. That's the real sting. That you didn't throw dirt. You grew out of it. You didn't retaliate. You reinvented. You didn't expose them. You elevated, and in doing so, left them gasping for relevance. You became the kind of story that writes itself. The kind of person whose absence feels like a statement, and whose presence rearranges the emotional temperature of a room. They wanted you to play the villain, but you played the architect. You rebuilt yourself, and now their issue isn't just with you. It's with the echo of you, with the way your name makes people sit up straighter. You became an emblem, not because you wanted to, but because you earned it. Every tear you refused to turn into theater, every boundary you drew in silence, every betrayal you walked away from without dragging anyone through the mud. That's what built your name, and people remember that. Not the theatrics of your critics, but the precision of your movement. You walked with pain but never passed it on. You suffered, but never sharpened your wounds into weapons. And that kind of strength is unforgettable. It haunts the insecure. Because you proved that reputation doesn't come from image. It comes from integrity under pressure. They tried to drown your name, and now they hear it spoken like prophecy. They can't escape it. Not in meetings. Not in social circles. Not in casual conversation. Your name is tethered to resilience, to insight, to something earned. And they choke on the truth that no one asks for their opinion anymore. People don't inquire about your scandals. They ask how you stayed so composed, how you kept building, how you managed to remain generous while being dissected. That question alone is their undoing, because there's no lie that can compete with consistent grace under fire. They talk about you now, not because you demanded it, not because you lobbied for attention, but because your name rooms you never entered. It arrived before you did. It spoke when you stayed silent. And what unsettles them most is that they cannot trace the origin of your reputation, because it wasn't manufactured. It wasn't built through associations or appearances. It was carved in silence, away from cameras and witnesses, in the shadows where most people crumble. You built your reputation in solitude, brick by brutal brick. And that's why they can't destroy it. Noise can discredit a reputation built in vanity, but solitude leaves no handprints behind. It leaves no collaborators to flip, no marketing campaign to expose. What you built is immune to slander because it was never fed by applause. While they broadcasted their achievements, you refined your discipline in the dark. While they traded validation like currency, you invested in self-respect. And now your value is untouchable. They can scream, they can accuse, they can twist and perform and gather witnesses. But your reputation is built on what you endured in silence. It's not just impressive, it's undeniable. Because when people ask about you, they're not reciting headlines. They're referencing consistency. They're speaking about the storm you outlasted, the war you walked through without losing your voice. That's why your reputation hits harder. Because it's not borrowed. It's not co-signed. It was bled for. And no volume of gossip can overpower something that was built in isolation with nothing but grit and clarity. People forget that the strongest reputations don't rise during celebration. They rise in seasons of isolation, when nobody's watching. When your back is against the wall and the silence is so loud it feels like another enemy. That's where you built it. In the empty rooms where your only audience was the voice in your head saying, "Get up again." And you did. Every time. Not for admiration, not for optics, but because you refused to die in their version of you. You refused to let the live longer than your legacy. And so you rose day after day, sharpening your name like a blade. You built a presence so routed in solitude that now, when they try to smear it, they end up choking on their own echo. They can't handle that you didn't need their stage. You built your own floor, designed your own spotlight, and spoke to no one until the work was done. That's the part they can't compete with. Reputation built in noise can be stolen, borrowed, inflated. But reputation built in solitude is bulletproof, because it has no witnesses to betray you, no allies to distance themselves when the weather changes. Your story was written alone. And now, when people quote it, they're quoting something real. Not a projection, not a PR stunt. And your enemies, they can't unwrite it. They can only scream louder, hoping someone will mistake volume for truth. You didn't grow in visibility. You grew in voids, in the quiet heartbreaks that never made it to conversation, in the betrayals you never avenged, in the patience you practiced while being provoked. And every time you didn't react, you built another layer of credibility. That's what they don't understand, that your reputation was a long game, not an accident, not a fluke, but a result of brutal self-refinement. They thought you vanished, that you disappeared because you weren't clapping back. But you weren't disappearing. You were becoming. And now that you've returned, your name enters the room with more weight than their entire resume. They want to discredit you with anecdotes, isolated half-truths, disconnected moments of your past they think still hold power. But your reputation no longer lives in those fragments. It lives in the sum of what you've become. It lives in how you carry yourself, in the respect you command without asking, in the way others speak about you with certainty. You didn't just survive the noise, you out-evolved it. And now that people see your depth, the shallow accusations float like dust. They can't weaponize your silence anymore. It has already become your legacy. They're scrambling now, whispering louder, searching for cracks in something forged under pressure they could never endure. But you're no longer concerned with their tone. You know who you are, and more importantly, so does everyone else. You didn't build a reputation. You became one. That's why their envy has become agony. They're trapped in rooms where your name carries authority they can't buy. They're surrounded by people who respect you, not because of what you said, but because of what you never had to say. There's an elegance to your threat. You don't confront, you don't explain. You exist with intention. And people feel that. The way you move, the way you speak, the way you never need to discredit others to elevate yourself. That kind of presence isn't taught. It's earned. And your haters, they know it. That's why they twitch when your name comes up. That's why they overact, overcorrect, overshare. Because they are still dependent on perception while you've already transcended it. They chase optics. You embody substance. You were never loud. You were never desperate. You just stayed consistent in the dark long enough to be undeniable in the light. And now, their noise cannot erase you. Their rumors cannot dim you. Because reputation built in solitude is like stone. It carries the weight of stillness. It outlasts storms. It doesn't respond to whispers. It waits. And then it stuns. They chased it. Status, that shiny illusion draped in borrowed applause and temporary relevance. They chased it like it was oxygen, like proximity to a pedestal would somehow rewrite the hollow space inside their chest. They aligned themselves with trends, with names, with temporary thrones that crumbled at the first whisper of real pressure. They walked in rooms louder than their merit, dressed in titles they hadn't earned, hoping to camouflage their emptiness behind social rituals and borrowed credibility. And you stayed still and chase. You built. You constructed depth in silence, crafted identity brick by discipline brick. You didn't campaign for power. You became it. And now they look at you, confused, offended by the fact that your very presence commands what their noise could never manufacture. That's what status truly is, not what people say about you, but what shifts when you enter the room. It's the subtle straightening of spines, the silence that follows your name. It's not loud, not desperate. It's not manufactured in the pressurized gas chamber of public opinion. It's forged in solitude, in your absence, in how people feel when you're gone. You didn't demand status. You dismantled the need for it. You became a standard, and standards never have to announce themselves. They simply exist, and when people meet you, they either rise or they recoil, because your presence exposes the truth of who they are. It holds a mirror up to every shortcut they took, and every hollow crown they placed on their own heads. And that is unbearable for those who only ever performed power. You weren't obsessed with being seen. You were obsessed with becoming. You didn't post your every move hoping for validation. You moved like a shadow, quiet, exact, and always one step ahead. You weren't afraid of anonymity because you understood one truth they never grasped: reputation doesn't build status. Discipline does. Your mornings started earlier, your intentions ran deeper, and your decisions weren't for show. They were for evolution. And while they scrambled for likes and clout and applause, you crafted silence into strength and strategy into legacy. They thought you were invisible, but you weren't hiding. You were becoming unignorable. They never saw it coming, because people obsessed with status only respect noise. They confuse attention with influence. And when you walked in without needing either, they didn't know where to place you. You weren't begging to sit at their table. You were the reason the table existed, and slowly they began to feel it. That shift, that chill, that uneasy weight in the air when your name came up. Not because you demanded respect, but because you rendered disrespect obsolete. You didn't ask to be revered. You made irreverence look childish. That is status, not being called great, making it impossible not to be called great. You see, status is only meaningful when it isn't chased, when it's grown through suffering, through solitude, through sacrifices that never made it to Instagram. You sacrificed comfort. You bled in silence. You lost the shallow connections that couldn't breathe at your depth. And in the wreckage, you found something better than status: sovereignty. Now they sit in boardrooms whispering your name like it's a prophecy. Their mentors quote you. Their idols follow you. And they sit there wondering how you did it. But you didn't do it. You became it. Not with shortcuts. Not with showmanship. With persistence. With precision. With principles that never bent to momentary applause. And now they imitate your poise. They steal fragments of your language. They mimic your cadence, hoping some of your gravitas will rub off on them. But status built on imitation crumbles under scrutiny. Your foundation was forged in original pain and original vision. They cannot replicate what they never endured. They can wear the suit, but they can't survive the storm. You didn't dress like power. You became it in posture, in poise, in patience. And now, they measure themselves against you. That is how status is truly defined, not the platform you stand on, but by the reflection you cast in others. The most beautiful part, you don't even care. Status doesn't seduce you, because once you've seen what it takes to build substance, status becomes ornamental, something to be worn by the insecure, something to be handed out in the absence of real impact. You're not chasing admiration, you're cultivating legacy. You're playing long-term games with long-term people. Your currency is truth, your weapon is restraint, and your armor is the proof that you didn't fold. Status was never the goal. Mastery was. And that's why you win. They're panicking now, because you've become a gravitational force. You don't enter rooms. You alter them. You don't ask for respect. You create atmospheres where disrespect cannot breathe. Your stillness speaks louder than their spectacle. Your vision commands more loyalty than their volume. And your journey, it's filled with scars that whisper things no title ever could. They see it now. That status wasn't something you wore. It was something you earned. And no rumor, no smear, no desperate claw for attention can change that. They tried to claim the room before they ever earned it. They walked into circles not with substance, but with noise. Louder than their merit, sharper than their character, convinced that if they said the right things to the right people enough times, the room would bend in their favor. And for a while it did. Until your name started slipping in, not through performance, not through proximity, but through proof. Whispers of you echoed in spaces you hadn't even touched yet. You weren't there, but your decisions were. Your actions were. Your discipline was. And that's when the tension began. Not because you arrived, but because the idea of you couldn't be silenced. That echo became their ghost. Their issue was never with what you did in front of them. It was with what they couldn't control behind the scenes. Because your reputation grew in places they thought would be exclusively theirs. You see, they believed influence was something you could dominate with volume, with cliques, with carefully polished mediocrity. But you changed the room without needing to be in it. Your name appeared on lips they wanted clout from. Your character became a reference point in conversations they used to command. And that is what infuriates them. You didn't ask for space. You redefined it. And now every time your name is brought up in rooms they thought they owned, it diminishes the illusion they built for themselves. You became a reminder, not of who you are now, but of everything they tried to prevent you from becoming. You are the haunting truth that they failed to bury, that despite the silence, the sabotage, the passive-aggressive erasure, you expanded. You never had to outshine them directly. You simply outgrew the shadows they tried to keep you in. And now, they can't sit comfortably in spaces they thought belonged to them. Because your presence lingers like unfinished judgment, like justice in progress. Your name alone is enough to destabilize their sense of control. not because it's loud, but because it carries memory. You didn't shout. You evolved. You didn't push your way in. You became the reason doors started opening for others. And now your name arrives in rooms like thunder wrapped in elegance. It does not beg to be welcomed. It is felt, and that disturbs them. Because they know the foundation built their ego upon was perception. They performed for acceptance. You built for impact. They used conversation as currency. You used silence as strategy. And now they watch, helpless, as the rooms thought they dominated begin to speak of you like myth, like prophecy, like proof that greatness does not need to announce itself. They watch their influence shrink every time you are referenced with respect. Every time someone quotes your discipline, admires your growth, or studies your composure, their authority evaporates a little more. Because you are the evidence that it's possible to win without deceit, to lead without seeking followers. You are the threat they cannot contain. And they panic not because you're aggressive, but because you're inevitable. They don't know when your name will come up next, or how it always does when excellence is discussed. But it does. It finds its way in like a pulse, like an undertone that refuses to be silenced. You became an emblem, not of success, but of evolution. And now they can't recreate you. They can't copy the aura. Because the echo of your name is built from something they cannot access earned reverence. It's not marketing, it's memory. And no campaign, no fake smile, no social alliance can overwrite that. Your legacy was not constructed with popularity. It was forged in restraint, in loyalty to values they discarded long ago for clout. And now those same values are being praised in circles they wish forget you ever existed. But they won't. Because your absence is louder than their presence. They throw your name around now, but not with malice, with hesitation, with that nervous glance, wondering who else in the room admires you, wondering which of their allies carries your blueprint in secret. They're realizing too late that you didn't just show up, you lasted. And that kind of longevity terrifies them, because they're still auditioning for roles in rooms where you've already authored the script. They still seek validation. You became the standard. You became the story they tried to write themselves into. And now they're stuck playing supporting characters in a plot you never shared with them. Your name became a verdict, not because you forced it, but because you embodied it. You moved differently. You respected power by not abusing it. You didn't burn bridges, but you also didn't shrink when they tried to corner you. And that balance, that poise under pressure, made your name sacred in places they thought they could dominate through volume alone. They never expected grace to become threat. They never imagined stillness could become warfare. But your existence, unbothered and unshakable, became their undoing. So let them feel the echo. Let it follow them into meetings, into conversations, into dreams. You don't need to be there. Your legacy already is. You didn't seek their spotlight. You redefined the room. And now the rooms they once ruled with shallow charisma belong to silence. A silence that listens for your name. A silence that honors what they tried to erase. Their problem was never your arrival. It was that you never left. You transformed into the very atmosphere they now suffocate in. And your name, it doesn't need an introduction anymore. It echoes. And echoes never die.